plan somewhere else. To be honest with you, I kind of like the expository preaching method. It keeps me honest, preaching straight through a book like this. Because normally, if there's a verse I don't quite understand, you just skip it. You can't do that when you preach a verse by verse. So anyway, verse number 1. Boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. James says this in James chapter 4, Go ye now, ye that say tomorrow or today or tomorrow we will go to such a city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get gain, whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. What is your life? It is a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. For ye ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. But ye now rejoice in your boastings, and all such rejoicing is evil. I was telling you this morning that I was looking up some stuff. Ran across, this is why I was looking up when folks passed. We have a tendency, when we're younger, to think we're going to live forever. We don't think that there's ever going to come an end to our lives. We think we're going to be here forever and ever and ever. And we have as much time as possible. You've heard people say, oh, I know I need to be a Christian, but I'm going to wait until I've had my fun, and I'm going to go ahead and sow my wild oats now, and then when I'm old and I'm too old to have any fun, I'll get saved to be a Christian and all that. Listen, you don't know anything. Rebecca had a cousin. His name was Sean. He was in the Air Force, stationed in Japan. He was 21 years old, married, and he and his wife were expecting their first baby. He decided to go camping, have a fun weekend with the guys. He had plans. They had no reason to believe that when he kissed his wife goodbye that Friday or whenever they left, that would be the last time they ever saw that she ever saw him. He thought that they had all the time in the world. They were camping, and it was kind of cold, and they had a space heater, and the space heater malfunctioned and produced carbon monoxide gas, which is colorless and odorless, and it connects to your hemoglobin in your blood 100 times more than oxygen does. And basically everybody in the tent died. When they didn't show up at the base at time, they sent somebody looking for them and found them. Had no idea. 21 years old and gone. My dad was 57 when he died. I know that doesn't sound as young as 20, but Dad had no reason to believe that he was going to die. It's not like a messenger came up to the house, knocked on the door a week before and said, Mr. Neely, here's your death certificate. I just want to let you know that you have a week left. It doesn't work like that. We don't know how much time we have. He had plans. They were going to adopt my little brother. They had all these plans about what was going to happen in the future. And these plans, he had a massive heart attack on a Saturday morning. It fell over dead and never regained consciousness. Mom went to the hospital on the ambulance, and it was gone by the time he got there. It threw her into a deep depression, and the family moved from Colorado back to West Virginia. God still worked in that sadness, but I want you to know, nobody had. My sister had just started college out there in Colorado. The other kids were in school. Everything was going along nicely, and then something like that happened and things changed. The Bible says in verse 1, boast not thyself of tomorrow. You have no idea what's going to happen today, much less tomorrow. Your life, the Bible says, is like a vapor. You ever boiled any water and you see all the steam rise off of it? Does your kitchen get full of that steam? It rises up about that far above the pot and dissipates and goes away. And that's the way our lives are. People die every single day, at every single age. From toddlers, I just heard a story just this past week about a toddler about 2 years old. They looked away for a second and the kid fell into a bucket of water and drowned. Teenagers, I've heard story after story. My cousin Ronnie, there was this girl that he was sweet on before he and Peggy got together. And everybody thought that they were going to wind up getting married, but she and her friends had driven down to Myrtle Beach for a weekend, and on the way back they fell asleep, wrecked the car, and died. There's suicides and murderers And when you're driving on this road outside, you're this far from an oncoming car going 50 miles an hour. Your life is hanging by a thread at every moment, but yet we boast. That's what this is saying. Don't boast of tomorrow. You have no idea what your life is going to be like. I'm going to tell on myself. I don't know why this entered into my head, except maybe God was prepping for the sermon. But on the way home from work Friday, I was coming to the house. I was going to grab Benny and go back out. And I changed my shirt too because the shirt I had on was too short and it was getting untucked. But anyway, as I was driving, somebody was honking their horn. I said, why are they honking their horn? Now, in my head is maybe they're honking. I did something, or I didn't think I cut anybody off. I wasn't trying to. But I just assumed maybe I'd done something. And in my head is like, oh, you're almost to the house. If somebody has road rage, they can follow you to the house. And when you pull up, they'll just shoot you in the head and you'd be dead right there in front of your house. How long will it take before somebody realizes that something happened? I think Benny probably would come out and find it, but that actually went through my head on Friday. Because of this, because of our unsurety of tomorrow, there are some things we should never put off. Number one, never put off getting right with God. You don't know how much time you have. C.T. Townsend tells of a story of a young girl that came to one of his youth rallies. She was unsaved, and she was under conviction. They were friends. She was telling her to go to the altar. She says, I need to be saved. I don't want to do it today. I'll wait, I think it was like until Sunday or the next evening of the rally or whatever it was. When they left the rally that evening, she died in a car crash and she never got saved. She put it off thinking she had plenty of time, and she doesn't. And never put off your relationships with other people. My uncle died. Well, in Acts 26, before I go there, in Acts chapter 26, it tells about King Agrippa. Paul was telling how God had met him on the road to Damascus. And he said to Paul, almost thou persuaded me to be a Christian. You see, almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. It doesn't really matter if you're almost a Christian. You can be on the precipice of being saved for your entire life and die and go straight to hell. Almost doesn't count. Agrippa almost. Paul said, I wish you were almost and altogether. Take out one less. If you're almost, take out one more step. Agrippa, as far as we know, never got saved. He's in hell today, as far as we know, saying, I wish I would have just taken that one little half step ahead. Never put off your relationship with others. When I went to ESTA, I had a church buddy. She was about 45 when I was 18. Her name was Barbara Riddle. She was a little short woman, and she had this bright orange hair. And she always walked with this real hesitant gait because there was something wrong with her leg. I never seen that woman not smiling. She was my buddy, and I you know how you love your church buddies to death. You just love them to death. And I was a young man, and then Rebecca and I started dating, and then I graduated high school, and life started going really fast. I had every intention of going back and visiting and talking with her and and I never wanted her not to be a part of my life because she's my friend. And there's a lot of times that people been my friend, things like that, that came up. My uncle died in 2010. My Uncle Junior. And I went up to his funeral. And there in that cemetery next to my aunt and uncle's house, as I was walking up to where they're burying him, I saw her grave. I didn't even know she died. My friend that I cared for had a seizure, and they put her into a home, and then she died in the home and was buried. Had no idea. Life passes too quickly not to be intentional with those that you love. If there's a problem between you and somebody else, don't put off till tomorrow to make it right. That's what this is saying. Don't boast of tomorrow. You don't know what tomorrow is. All right, verse 2. Let another man praise thee, and not thine own mouth, a stranger, not thine own lips. Don't brag. Don't pat yourself on the back. By the way, when you pat yourself on the back, you look stupid and it's disgusting. You might hurt yourself, right? The fact of the matter is, don't praise yourself. Let other people praise you. This is what it's saying. There will be times where you might need to be honest. If somebody asks you if you can do something, and somebody says, can you build something that will do this at work? I said, yeah, I can do that. The question is not whether I can, it's how much time it's going to take. It's not bragging, it's just being honest. But you should not praise yourself. Man, I am the best of this, I'm the best of that. Don't do that. God wants us to be humble. And if you're bragging on yourself, you're not being humble. A stone is heavy and the sand weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than them both. You know, if you make a bag of rocks, it gets kind of. I remember when Benny was little, he'd always pick. Remember how he'd always pick up rocks and put them in his pockets, and he'd give you rocks and all that. But rocks can be heavy, and sand is so heavy that when you put them in a sandbag, you can use it to hold back water. And so the Bible here is saying there's something that weighs even more than that. And what it's saying here, the wrath of a fool is heavier than them both. A fool, when he gets mad, is not bound by things like common sense or reason or thinking ahead a second. When a fool gets mad, he just reacts like a dog that gets... when a dog gets mad, he'll bite you 100% of the time. It doesn't matter if you're holding a gun in your hand. The dog don't pay any attention to that because he's a dog. A fool, when they get mad, they respond. That's the reason why somebody will walk into a room full of people, pull out a gun and shoot somebody in front of God and everybody because they're a fool and their wrath is a weighty and heavy thing. I can't tell you how many lives were racked by the angry fools. Wrath is cruel and anger is outrageous, but who is able to stand before envy? Now, there's three emotions mentioned here. Wrath is extreme, intense anger, fueled by a desire for revenge or harm. That kind of anger is cruel. Wrath is, I'm going to get even with them. When I worked at McDonald's, I don't know why somebody thought I had any interest on this girl. I had no interest in her at all. She was a friend of mine, and I talked to her as a friend, and that's it. That was it. But her boyfriend got jealous of me, and while I was working at Kroger's, I just had brand new tires put on my pickup truck, and he knifed all four of them. Luckily, I had road hazard and I replaced all four of them. But still, the whole point of the thing is that the wrath he had wrath there, and it was stupid wrath. But once again, we go back to the other one about how weighty the anger of a fool is. But the fact of the matter is, that was wrath. He wanted to do something to hurt me because he thought I was trying to muscle in on his girlfriend, which I had no intention of, not any whatsoever. Anger, well, it's anger. You know what anger does. Anger slams doors. Anger slams the phone down and hangs up on somebody. Anger raises its voice. Anger throws things. Anger will cause outrageous behavior. Somebody who gets angry, they'll act in an outrageous manner, and you look at them and say, that guy was all over the line. It's not as bad as wrath. There's not really an intention to hurt somebody. It's just acting like a toddler who had their toy taken away from them. That's what anger is. But it says, but of the three, envy is worse. Now the word here using for envy also talks about is jealousy. Those two words, those two ideas kind of crisscross right there. It's an unstoppable sin. If somebody is jealous, they'll go beyond what wrath is. They'll go beyond what anger is. And I can't tell you how many women have been shot because of a jealous husband. I can't tell you the number of men who've been poisoned because of a jealous wife. I can't tell you how many people have been destroyed because of jealousy. Open rebuke is better than secret love. 90% of the problems in our relationships with each other are due to one or two things, either by poor communication or outright lying. We don't say what we feel. We don't say what we think. The other person thinks everything is fine because we don't say anything. This is an example. You know your wife's mad, Bobby, and you say, "What's wrong?" And they say, "Nothing." Is there something wrong? Yes, there's something wrong. Is she telling you the truth? No, she's lying to you. I've heard time after time about guys who were clueless of how bad things are going with their wives. They said, "Well, yeah, we're fighting a little bit, but I guess we're okay." Until all of a sudden she walks up and says, "I'm done. I'm getting a divorce." By the time she's reached the point that there's no turning back and she's done. So there's a switch that is flipped in her mind and she gives up on the relationship. She loses hope. And if she would have just said, "Hey, Bubba, here's the deal. You're doing this, 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 and this that I cannot live with. If we don't change these things, we will no longer be married. Do you understand me?" Most of these guys would say, "I didn't know that bothered you," because most guys are clueless. I'm just being honest with you. But their marriage would have been saved. Open rebuke is better than secret love. Well, I can just put up with it. If it bothers you, talk about it. How many sappy romance movies? I'm talking something like this on Lifetime or something like that. How many of them would be over in the first 10 minutes if the guy would say, "You know, I think I'm in love with you." It'd been over. The whole 2-hour movie over in 2.5 minutes. Or my favorite one where there's a stupid misunderstanding, and if she's like, and he's like, "She's left it. Why did you leave?" "Well, you were with so-and-so." "My sister?" "That was your sister?" Talk about it, you moron. But of course, then you wouldn't have a sappy 2-hour movie where, you have them running through the airport concourse. "Martha, John," that. They're laughing at me, Benny. The whole thing is about secrets, okay? Well, it says open rebuke is better than secret love. It's better for you to get things out in the open than hold things back. And I just want to talk a minute about secret. In most contexts, things that are secret are wrong because we are hiding them. Now, when I'm talking about a secret, I'm not talking about a surprise birthday party. I'm not talking about a birthday present that you're trying to surprise somebody. The idea behind those things is not that I'm trying to keep this knowledge from them. I'm trying to keep this from them for a very short period of time for their benefit. You get the difference? So when you have a secret, 99% of the time, it's because you know it's wrong. If I steal from my boss, I want to keep that secret because it's wrong. If I murder somebody and hide the body, I want to keep where the body is secret because if they find it, I might go to jail. You get what I'm saying? If I'm cheating on my spouse, I don't want anybody finding that. I want to keep that secret because I don't want the consequences of my bad behavior. If I get stoned every night, I don't want my boss to find out about it because there's a zero tolerance policy at work for drug abuse. And to be honest with you, the church should drive me out if something like that happened too. If I go and I buy an expensive gun behind my wife's back and manipulate things so she doesn't know that I spent the money, and I'm saying I'm just keeping it secret from her, I am lying to her. Or the one about the ladies, they'll go to the store and buy something and they make sure they throw away the receipt so their husband don't see what the receipt is. Now, there's a difference between secret and privacy, okay? Privacy is something that we don't care that people know that we do. It's just something that is for a limited audience, okay? How many people took a shower in the past 2 days? Guess, or a bath. Bath counts too, Bobby. That's fine. But my point is that you don't care to know that you took a bath, but you don't want to have an audience while you do it. What's that? Not particularly, no. Going to the bathroom is not a secret. But no one wants to take out a billboard and say, "I pooped today." I'm just being honest with you. But there's things that are private and there's things that's not secret. I want to make that clear. the intimacy between the husband and wife, that's expected in the relationship, but it's between them and nobody else's. How I spend my money, it's not a secret, but it ain't none of your business. If I have a subscription to Hulu Plus or Netflix or Amazon Prime. I mean, if you ask me, I do to all three. I do have a subscription to all three of them. But the fact of the matter is, it's not any of your business how I spend my money. You're not in the audience of people who needs to know that. You get what I'm saying? So if you don't want to tell everybody how you spend your money, not because what you're doing. Now, if you had a subscription to the Playboy channel, that's a different story. But you get what I'm saying. There's a difference between privacy and secrecy. When Rebecca and I sit and talk about our family and our future or the problems that we're having, it's not our neighbor's business. I don't want a commentary from the guy at the grocery store. The pizza delivery dude don't need to be involved in that conversation. It's not that it's secret. It's not that there's anything wrong there, but the audience that it's is limited to is us. You get what I'm saying? So keep in your mind, just saying open rebuke is better than secret love. If you're keeping something secret, most of the time it's because it's wrong, and you know it's wrong. You don't want anybody to find out about it. You want to have we're getting ready to eat dinner. I see Benny trying to hide an uncrustable, it's a frozen peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He was trying to hide it under his bottom at the table. And I said, I see that. He goes, well, I'm getting hangry, and it's going to take you forever to get to the table and eat. So the point of it is, when you hide something, it's probably wrong. It's okay, son. Okay, verse 6. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Now, by the wounds here, it's talking about being rebuked. It's a good thing for your friends to be able to rebuke you. If Rebecca's not doing something right, if there's something in her life that's not right, and Chris sees it, she's her friend, and Chris can say, Rebecca, I love you. This is something I'm seeing. It's concerning you. It may hurt her feelings, but the rebuke of a friend is a whole lot better than the insincerity of an enemy. My wife calls me out on stupid stuff all the time. Because she loves me enough to say, you need to not do that, you need to stop that. But the fact of the matter is, but when an enemy is deceitful, they'll tell you, you did wonderful, don't worry that nobody's mad at you. When they're getting ready to stab you in the back with a knife. That's what this is talking about. The full soul loatheth a honeycomb, but to the hungry soul every bitter thing is sweet. There's a Christian finance guy named Dave Ramsey, and he's talking about money, and he says, you know what? If you eat enough lobster, it tastes like soap. His point, is another way of saying the same verse, is that anything that you do enough of will become old hat. And you have to find a way to make something a little bit different, more interesting. There's a reason why the stuck-up French people made up gourmet cooking. They had so much money, they grew tired of normal food they had, so they had to have pâté de foie gras. You know what that means? Pâté de foie gras is goose liver. Or escargot, which is snails. Or oysters Rockefeller. They come up with all these fancy ways of eating all this stuff here, and they'll come up with all this stuff because they're trying to find a way to capture the goodness of food again. But do you remember when you was a kid and your mom would make mom would make lasagna, and it didn't happen very often. When she did, I got all excited. I like that lasagna. Pinto beans and cornbread, that's good eating. You know what I'm saying? Hey, a fried bologna sandwich is with a big slice of onion on it, those are some good eats. What he's saying here is that in plenty, sometimes it says even a honeycomb, which is like the best thing that you could eat back then. It says even a honeycomb is not very good. But to the poor soul, every bitter thing is sweet. The thing is, I'm going to tell you this. There's some blessings in being poor. Y'all ever made snow cream? Made ice cream out of, you have to not use the yellow snow, just to be honest. You have to find a nice, clean, untouched snow, and you put vanilla and sugar in it, and man, that was some good stuff. I remember that for a while, Mom would give me $1 every payday, and I could go and I could buy at Hex there in Crossley. That's how old that is. But I could go buy me a little dollar toy. Now $1 wouldn't even buy you a piece of candy. I remember one time she took me to Pizza Hut. Just me and her. I thought I was something special. And she says, you can order anything you want on the pizza. And I'd never heard of anchovies before. And I thought, well, I'm game to try it, but I'm only going to order it on half the pizza. I discovered 2 things that night. Number 1, I don't like anchovies. And number 2, there's no such thing as a half anchovy pizza. If you put an anchovy in the same zip code as your pizza, the whole pizza tastes like catfish. So, but those, I mean, it was just a pizza at Pizza Hut, but it still sticks in my mind. But going a little bit deeper on this, there has to be something more to life than consumption. There has to be more to life than just living for your own pleasure. No matter what it is that you're pursuing. There's people who's pursuing physical affection with other people, and they find out that no matter how many people they sleep with, it doesn't fulfill them. And no matter how much money they have, they're still not happy. And no matter how fancy of food that they eat, that they get sick and tired of it. And there has to be something more. And I'm going to tell you that serving God with your life, it will never get old. You'll never reach the end of God. God is infinite. And as you learn more about God, your mind expands, and then you see nooks and crannies about God you never known before. And you start investigating them, then all of a sudden you learn even more and even more and even more. We will spend an eternity learning about God. As a bird that wandereth from her nest, so is a man that wandereth from his place. A mama bird sitting on her eggs in her nest, and at times might have to get up and leave the nest to find food. So this bird leaving the nest, wandering around trying to find something to eat, could be eaten by a cat, could be eaten by a bird of prey, and leaving those eggs undefended and unincubated. And the whole fact of the matter is, it's a very dangerous circumstance. In the same way, the man leaves where he's supposed to be to go somewhere else. Like Abraham left the promised land to go to Egypt because there was no food in the promised land. Instead of trusting God, he went down to Egypt, which represents the world. So he left a relationship with God because things got hard and went back into the world. And God had to just physically remove him from Egypt. There's time after time in the Bible where people left where they were supposed to be. And I'm going to tell you what, if you wander from where you're supposed to be, where you got safety and comfort, you're going to find problems. Here's the truth. If you stay where you're not supposed to be, you're going to have problems. And if you leave where you're supposed to be, you're going to have problems. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart, so doth the sweetness of a man's friend by hearty counsel. Ointment is a lotion that's used to soothe rashes and other skin issues. And perfume make things smell sweet. And both of them make you happier. The ointment stops the itch from it stops the itch from itching. And the perfume just makes everything smell sweeter. And it's the same way of good advice from a friend. Someone you can confide in. Someone you can trust in. Someone you can tell something to and know that it's not going to be all over the valley in the next 5 minutes. You ever meet somebody that, my mom was bad about this. Nothing excited her more than getting some sort of juicy morsel of gossip. And if she hears that, I've told people there's ways of mass communication. Television, telephone, and tell my mom, because she's going to call everybody she knows and tell them this bit of news. It was the highlight of her life. Verse 10. Thine own friend and thy father's friend forsake not. Neither go into thy brother's house in the day of calamity, for better is a neighbor that is near than a brother that's far off. We should be there for our friends and our family friends. It kind of reminds me how we do funerals. We'll go to a funeral and the kids will say, why are we here? I don't know these people. Yeah, we went to church with them and such and such. Well, I don't remember them. Well, they're our friends. We're going to be there for them. The thing is we need to stick to the people. This is telling us to stick close to the people around us. My son, be wise and make my heart glad, that I may answer him that reproacheth me. This basically is saying, my son, be wise and live in such a way that you don't cause me to be embarrassed or bring shame upon me. As a father, I hope my son will be wise and not do evil things and not do things that will cause me to have to stand in front of a principal and give an answer to things that cause me to just be embarrassed. I was called down to my daughter's school one time because she was making terroristic threats when she was about 6 years old. Of course, then I kind of laughed at the teacher, but the fact of the matter is the same thing is true. We need to be careful that we don't bring shame to our parents. A prudent man foreseeth evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. A prudent person cares about the future and cares about it. She looks ahead to see where problems might be and tries to avoid it. The simple, though, doesn't listen to any kind of warnings, doesn't listen to anything, and just moses straight on up and gets into trouble. It's like driving with GPS. The other day, Rebecca and I we drove separately to work, and I left and she left at the same time, and I was following the GPS and she was going the other way, and the GPS was taking me a different way through town. And she says, why in the world are you going that way? Because she called me up and I was like, I'm just following the GPS. And what it did is there was some congestion on some of the roads, so it routed me all the way around the roads. But you see, the thing is a good example is that the simple will hear the GPS say, you'll save 30 minutes by making the next exit. Oh, I don't know what it's talking about. And then they sit in traffic for 30 minutes. Like buying insurance. Oh, I don't need insurance on my car. All I need is liability. Then all of a sudden you hit something and you can't fix your car. Well, you should have had insurance. It's like saving for retirement or listening to Bible prophecy. God's warning us about what's going to happen in the future. And if you care about the future, if you care about yourself, you ought to listen to what the Bible says and make sure you're right with God before the rapture happens. Take his garment for surety for a stranger, and take the pledge of him for a strange woman. This is the same as Proverbs 20:16. We've already talked to it. Like I said then, clothes are cheap now. You can go to buy a Goodwill or Walmart and buy a bunch of clothes for a little bit of money. But it wasn't like that back then because clothes were all handmade. I was looking online, how long would it take you to make clothes by hand? And the woman said that if she had the pattern and the fabric already, she could cut and sew a t-shirt by hand in about 3 hours. Take 3 hours to make one t-shirt. Not with a sewing machine. Sewing machine would be a lot faster. But by hand, it would take about 3 hours. But that's with the fabric. Back then, they didn't have the fabric. First, you had to raise the sheep. And then you had to shear the sheep. And then you had to spin the wool and make thread. And then once you had the thread, then you had to weave it into cloth. And then after you had the cloth, then you could start sewing it. So I looked it up. Without raising the sheep and spinning the wool and all that, if you just had the wool already, to weave a yard of fabric, it takes at least 3 hours. And it would take about 3 yards to make one t-shirt. So it took you 9 hours to weave the fabric to make one t-shirt, and then another 3 hours to sew it. So just looking at that, one t-shirt, if you just paid them minimum wage today, one t-shirt handmade, not counting how much it costs to raise the sheep, not counting how much it costs to spin out the wool, would cost you about $90. Now you see why clothes was expensive back then. And so clothes were used for collateral for loans. And this is taking it from the judge's perspective. It says, take his clothes because he co-signed on the loan. And the strange woman is a foreign woman, a woman that didn't live there. And it was saying, hey, even if she convinced somebody because she batted her eyes at him real nice, it doesn't matter. If he said that he's going to pay for it, go ahead and take the collateral for the loan. So in other words, this is what this is telling you, as it said in other places, don't co-sign. Don't co-sign. It's not a good idea to co-sign on a loan. Think about this. Banks are in business to make money by loaning money. That's why they are there. They want to loan as much money as they possibly can because every time they loan money, they make money on the loans. They look at somebody and they're evaluating if this guy's going to pay them back or not. And if they look at somebody and said, I don't think he's going to pay me back, they probably have a good feeling who's going to pay him back. You say, well, listen, I know he will, so if he don't, I will. You're taking a huge risk. I had a boss at Kroger's, and I think it was his stepdaughter. He co-signed for her, and she didn't pay, and he took the car. But the whole point is, we should not be co-signing for people. He that blessed his friend with a loud voice, rising early in the morning, it shall be counted a curse to him. Now, I'm going to tell you my interpretation of this. I'm going to tell you what some of the commentary said. See if you can see what the commentary said. I am a preacher, and God has blessed me with a big mouth. I have a tendency of getting loud. It comes in handy a lot of the places. I can speak loudly in a group of people, and people can hear me pretty clearly. If I call out for somebody, they can hear me. But if I'm trying to be quiet in the morning hours, my big mouth, I can't control a lot of the times. I can't tell you how many times Rebecca's like, be quiet, you're going to wake everybody in the house up. That's what I'm thinking that it means. However, several commentaries, including McGee, said this is about insincere and excessive flattery, raising suspicion of selfishness. He cites Absalom, who would just say, if I was judge, I would have found with you and all that. I don't necessarily see that in this verse, but I'm just letting you know what they say. Okay. A continual dripping and a very rainy day and a contentious woman are alike. On a very rainy day, the rain falls constantly without ever letting up. It gets everything wet, and then everything drips. A contentious woman, he says here, lest her frustrations and her angers be known. It's like dripping water off the roof. Drip, drip, drip. Drip, here comes a snide comment. Drip, here comes a reminder of a past mistake. Drip, here comes a smart aleck response. Drip, here comes an insult. Drip, here comes a hateful word. Drip, drip, drip. They say that water is the universal solvent. It will dissolve anything given time. And I think that this constant nagging, and it doesn't just apply to women. It applies to men too. But if you're nagging somebody constantly, it will erode the best relationship possible. We need to make sure that we don't fall into this pattern of drip, 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 drip all the time. Hateful words, insults. Don't be a drip. Don't be a nag. Verse 16 goes with that. I talked about 15 first, but the 16 says, whosoever hideth the wind. The her here is talking about the contentious woman. And then the ointment of his right hand, which betrayeth itself. So, what it's saying is you can't hide the situation. Somebody is being nagged all the time. It grates down and you can see it on their face. You can see it on them. This is like you're trying to hide the wind. There ain't no way to do it. It's talking about ointment. It's like a perfume. Every now and again, my wife will ask me to rub lotion on her feet. And she'll have this Bath and Body Works lotion. And I'll tell you, I don't know what they use for the smell of that stuff. But I mean, it's like industrial strength. I can wash my hands 57 times and I still smell like pumpkin spice winter fury or something. It just never goes away. And what it's saying is that this ointment, it's like holding that ointment in your hand. You're trying to keep people from smelling it, from seeing it, but they can smell it even though they don't see it. The fact of the matter is, the whole point of this is that this contentious relationship will fall out on people's, it'll beat down somebody and it'll be evident. I've seen guys whose wives nag. Now, I've seen guys do this too. It normally falls towards women, but I've seen guys do this too. And the effect is just dehumanizing. It'll destroy somebody constantly being nagged. If you find yourself always being critical, if you find yourself always finding fault, if you find yourself always having to say something, you just need to keep your mouth shut. It doesn't do any good to anybody to be a drip and just drip, 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 drip. Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friends. Countenance means the expression on his face. Friends sharpen us. Do you realize that? When I spend time with a friend, that friend not only lifts me up, but he encourages me and he challenges me and encourages me to be more than what I was. And it also lifts up my spirit. Verse 18, he who keepeth the fig tree shall eat the fruit thereof, so he that waiteth on his master shall be honored. The keeper of the fig tree benefits from the figs that the tree grew, even if the tree belonged to somebody else. And so does those who serve others, because usually you're going to get blessed from those efforts. That's what this is saying. When you serve your boss well, there's almost always benefits. As in water, let me take a drink of water and try that again because I'm going to lose my voice. Rebecca wanted me to sing a song with her on the way up, and so I had to belt it out, and I didn't have enough voice to do that. As in water, face answereth to face. So that part is saying, as your face is reflected in water like a mirror, so the heart of a man to a man. So a man's heart reveals his true nature to a man. If you want to know who you really are, look inside of yourself and see what you are. Hell and destruction are never full, so the eyes of man never satisfied. There's never enough wickedness. Criminals don't say, I've robbed enough today. I think I'm going to go home. They just keep on and keep on and keep on. Hell is not full. It's enlarging itself. And here's something else. Do you realize that people's attitudes are never satisfied? See, this is why communism will never work. No matter how much of something you give somebody, they always want something more. If you give them $1, they want $2. If you give them $2, they want $4. If you give them a house, they want a car too. You get what I'm saying? People always want more, and you'll never satisfy the wants of a man's heart. We're going to find other ways to find something. If you have a brand new iPhone, $27,259, whatever it is nowadays, and they come out with a brand new one, and yours works just fine, you're having no problems with it, it meets all your needs and expectations, there's people who will stand in line for 6 hours to get a new phone they don't even know they need. My favorite example is they were waiting in line for one of the new versions of the iPhone, and they had the old version. And they said, here's an example of the new phone. And everybody's, wow, that's so nice. It's so much prettier than mine. It's a lot faster than mine. It was the old version, and they didn't know the difference. As a firing pot for silver and the furnace for gold, so is a man to his praise. There's two ways of interpreting this. Now, a firing pot is used for refining silver, and a furnace is used for refining gold. And if you give somebody praise, you'll see what kind of person that you have. If their head swells, you'll find out that they're a vain individual. That's the way I take that to be. That praising somebody is putting them in a testing furnace. There's another way that you need to evaluate the character of those praising you, because they might have ulterior motives. Now, take it either which way you want to take it. Though thou shouldest bray a fool in a mortar among the wheat with a pestle, yet will not his foolishness depart from him. So, back in the day, have y'all ever seen a mortar and pestle? We use them today still. It's a little bowl. Usually you see them at like the pharmacy, right? And they'll put something in the bowl, and they have this rounded stick, and they just use that in the bowl to grind up. They'll use it to grind up pills or things like that, especially if they're going to do compounding. They'll do that. And it's common to have that mortar and pestle thing. Back in the day, they would use the mortar and pestle to bray wheat. They'd take their wheat kernels and put it in the bowl, and they'd take that thing and they'd work it and they'd work it and they'd work it, and they would grind that wheat until it was basically flour. And then they would add their meal and all that, and that's how they made their bread. And it said you could take and you could grind a fool in a mortar and pestle, and he'd still be foolish. In other words, no matter how much you try to refine the fool, the foolishness goes all the way down. If you ever met a fool, you know that's the truth. All right. Verses 23 through 27. All of them go together. So we have several different comments. Be thou diligently to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herds. For riches are not forever, and doth the crown endure to every generation? That's a question. The hay appeareth, and the tender grass shooteth itself, and the herbs of the mountains are gathered. The lambs are for thy clothing, and the goats are the price of thy field, and they shall have goats' milk enough for thy food, and for the food of thy household, and the maintenance of thy maidens. So what it's saying is, if you want to keep what you have, you need to keep an eye on what you got. In other words, to put it in modern day terminology, if you never look at your bank account and you only spend, you ain't going to have nothing pretty soon. If you don't pay attention to what you got, you can give somebody a brand new house, and if they do no maintenance on that house, then the house is going to fall down around their ears. I've seen that happen. So Solomon is reminding him that wealth and power doesn't last forever. I looked up an article, and they were talking about 20 millionaires who won their money from the lottery. That within 7 years, they're all broke. How in the world do you lose $1 million? By not paying attention to anything and being stupid. That's what it basically happens. Johnny Depp, for instance, was worth over $150 million. He made all kinds of movies. He's broke today. Spent it all. Mike Tyson was worth over $10 million. He declared bankruptcy in 2003. Do you realize there's been 9 different royal houses in England? What's the current one? Anybody? The House of Windsor. Right. There's been 9 of them. Why? Because what happened is one royal family goes away and they're supplanted by another one. That's what happens time after time. If you read in the Bible, the only house of the royal house that we know of that sustained was the house of David. It managed to retain, even though there was a time when a queen tried to usurp things. But the fact in Israel, it's like king after king was usurped, and then they brought in another whole house, and then they went away, and another one came up. Power, money, those things don't stay. They don't stay around. Keeping your eyes on the bottom line keeps stuff going. That's what Solomon was telling his son. It's like a business saying, listen, what you did to become successful, don't stop doing. I know that sounds stupid, that you have to say, hey, Disney, you became successful by making family-friendly films and telling old stories that had these wonderful themes. Keep doing the same thing. But if they say, no, what we want to do is make political stuff, and all of our character, we're going to reinvent all the stories, and we're just going to throw away the old scripts and make everything brand new, they're going to abandon what brought them to prosperity. They're not keeping eyes on their herd, and pretty soon they're going to find themselves in destruction. Wealth doesn't last forever. How in the world could Disney fall? Well, it's really easy. If they keep making stinkers of movies, nobody's going to buy it. Eventually, people stop paying all the money for Disney Plus. It's like at work. If you get a promotion because you work really hard, and then once you get the promotion, you do this. You sit down, and you prop your feet up and say, I have arrived. I don't need to do anything else. What's going to happen to you? You're going to get fired. You're going to lose your job. So in other words, what he was saying is, don't trust your wealth. Don't trust your position. Whatever it is that it took to get you where you are, you need to keep doing it. That's some good wisdom right there. All right. Any comments or anything? We'll be here at 6:30 on Tuesday to read the Bible.